This is part 3 of our video on angle theorems. We started with some vocabulary, and then we just finished looking at complementary, supplementary, reflex, and opposite angles. And in this video, we are going to take a look at the 3 parallel line patterns. So when I have 2 parallel lines are evenly spaced lines that never cross. They should always be marked with arrows, either 1 arrow or 2 arrows somewhere on the line. Now the arrows that are on the very ends of the line, that's just how you draw a line, right? So those don't mean they're parallel. It's the extra sets of arrows that tell me that they're parallel. So when I'm looking for parallel line theorems, I am always looking for those markings to show that those are parallel. Okay, so this theorem is the alternate angles, otherwise known as Zed pattern. And the reason it's called Zed pattern is because of the shape that it makes on the parallel lines. So if I take a look at angle X and I trace over angle X, and I take a look at angle Y and I trace over angle Y, you'll notice that they make a big Z. Now, sometimes the Z will be going forwards, sometimes the Z might be going backwards, right? But we're still just looking for that basic shape. And these 2 angles in Z pattern are equal. So X equals Y. So we are going to try an example. I have 2 parallel lines. I know that they're parallel because they have that extra set of arrow markings. So not the ones at the ends, but this extra set here. And then I like to trace over the angle I want. So I want to find angle X. That's this one. And I trace over the angle I know. That's the 53. And I see that they make a Z. So this is Z pattern or alternate angles, which means these 2 angles are equal. So X just equals 53. I don't need work for that. All I have to do is just state that X is 53. Okay, our next pair of parallel line patterns are corresponding angles, otherwise known as F pattern. And they are called F pattern for the same reason that Z pattern was called Z pattern. If we trace over the angles, we should see the letter F. So I do always look first for those parallel line markings. That's how I know that I can use this theorem. And then if I were to trace over angle X and angle Y, you will notice it makes an F. So in F pattern or corresponding angles, these 2 angles are also equal. So X equals Y. Now, I find sometimes people have the hardest time seeing the F pattern because sometimes it is forwards, sometimes it's backwards, sometimes it's upside down, sometimes it's upside down and backwards. So you have to be able to try to see the F even if it is turned upside down. Okay, so I'm going to try this example. First thing I notice are the parallel line markings, so I know these lines are parallel. The second thing I do is I trace over the angle I want to find, which is X, and the angle that I know in the question, which is 53, and I see that these 2 parts together make an F. So that means that those 2 angles are equal, so X is just 53 degrees. I do not need to show any work for that. All right, our last parallel line pattern are the co-interior angles, otherwise known as C pattern. So when I'm looking at my diagram, I'm always looking for those parallel line markers, so those little arrows. And then I'm going to trace over angle X and angle Y. And it's not very curvy, but it does make a C. Sometimes the C might be backwards, right? This one is a forwards C, but the 2 of them together make a very square looking C. Now, these two angles to me do not look like they're the same. Y is an acute angle, X is an obtuse angle, so they are not the same measurement, but they do still have something in common. They're not equal, but they do add to a number. And if I were to take X and Y and put them side by side, you would see that they make a straight line, which means they add to 180 degrees. So C pattern or co-interior angles add to 180 degrees. I have a diagram. You'll notice that all three of these examples, the 53 degrees are in the same spot. What's moving is the X in our picture. So I look for the parallel line markers, which I see. I trace over the angle I want, which is X, the angle I know, which is the 53, and I see that it makes a very square looking C. So I know that these two angles add to 180. So I can't just write 180 because that's not what X is. I need to make an equation for this one. So I would say X plus 53 equals 180 degrees. And then from there, I would solve by subtracting 53 from both sides. And 180, take away 53, is 127 degrees. So down here, I'm going to write that X is 127 degrees. All right, that's it for our 3 parallel line patterns. I will see you in video number 4, where we will try some questions where all of those angle theorems are mixed together.